I am Robert Marshall Longden. Just you want the surname?
Mm-hmm.
Longden.
What is your
Longden.
birthday?
My birthday
Mm-hmm.
is the 17th of February,
And?
which is in 2 days' time,
Yeah. What year?
1932.
32. So how old are you now? You are 80?
I will be 87 on Sunday.
So your birthday is coming up.
Yes.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
You're 87.
On Sunday.
Everybody look here young. What's going on? Is that because air or water?
I swim
You swim?
3 days a week
Oh, where?
in the heated pool in Notrahonga, and I play one game of golf a week at the Waitomo Golf Course.
You still play golf?
But I have to have a cart.
Yeah, but still, that's really special. Wow.
Perhaps I have a good wife who feeds me well too.
Where were you born?
I was born, what is now Hamilton, but it was called Frankton Junction.
And tell me about the family background when you were growing up.
I grew up in various parts with various relations for a long time. I lived with my grandmother in Hamilton. I lived with an uncle and aunt in a farming district called Mokawiti. I went back to Hamilton with an uncle and aunt, Roger, Colin and Lois Brewster, and then I went to a place called Waimiha, where my father had a farm.
Wow.
And I grew up on a farm from about 1942.
So what was it like to grow in the farm? Did you have to work a lot? What is it?
Well, yes.
What is the fun part of it and what is the hard part of it?
Well, when we, on the farm at Waimiha in 1942, they didn't have any electricity, and the telephones were very primitive, what's referred to as party lines, and they and life was generally very, very hard. And I left school at 14 years of age to work on the family farm. And then when I turned 18, I was called up for compulsory military training, which was in 1950.
Yeah.
In 1950, I did 3 months compulsory military training, came back to the farm. I did 2 annual 3 weekly camps to keep up with the play. I was in the artillery. And then when I was 20 years and 6 months old, I volunteered to go to Korea with the army again. It was in 1952, but I didn't leave until 1953.
So when did you leave for Korea?
I left for Korea in August 1953. The truce had just been signed.
Right. And so when you joined the military in 1952, where did you go to get basic military training?
Papakura Military Camp.
Could you spell it?
P-A-P-A-K-U-R-A.
Papakura.
Yes.
And what kind of basic military training? How was it?
It was the first 6 weeks was the normal military training, but the balance of it, I trained as a radio operator.
Radio operator.
Yes.
And then when you were headed to Korea, August of 1953, already war ended, and how did you feel about it?
Well,
you felt more safer, right?
Well, we did, but we were also disappointed we'd done all the training and we didn't actually get to fight, although we were there. It was only a truce that was signed. So when we got there, we were still on high alert for 12 months.
And so when you volunteered to join the army in 1952, but did you know anything about Korea before you left for Korea?
No.
I mean, did you learn anything from school or did you learn anything or knew anything about Korea?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing. Virtually nothing.
And
Although I knew there was a war on there, I was very aware of that.
yes, because it was all over in the news media, right? And when you go to Korea for the first time, where did you land it?
Busan.
Busan. And tell me about that Busan you saw for the first time, or Korea overall, when you saw the Korea for the first time in your life. How did you feel it? What did you see it?
It was absolutely devastating to arrive in Busan and see the poverty there. And then when we moved from there by train, a 12-hour train trip to Seoul, to see children, hungry children, that we gave our rations to. And obviously Seoul had suffered greatly during the war.
You were in Seoul?
We went to Seoul, and then from Seoul we went about 40 kilometres north of the Imjim River, over the Imjim River, to where our camp was.
And tell me about Seoul you saw at the time. Detail. Give me the details, everything you saw and you remember now.
Well, we got off the train in the dark, so I didn't really get to see much of Seoul then. We got onto a truck and it was dark. But we did go down to Seoul on a couple of occasions, and I saw very little of Seoul then, but we did see how the work was starting to take place. So the place was slowly, immediately, work was being done to repair the damage.
Did you see any people in Seoul street?
Yes, we saw a few, but when I went back the second time, yes, we saw quite a number of people.
What do you mean second time?
Well, when I came, I had to go from the regiment to Incheon because we had a training course there, for an NCO training course. And we did see a few people then.
When was it?
That was in 1953.
53.
Yes.
So have you been back to Korea since then?
Yes, I have.
When?
I went. I've been back on 3 return visits.
3?
And they've always been in April.
2000? When was it?
One was a couple of years ago. One was about 3 years before that. I'm guessing a little bit here. And one was about 3 years before that.
Okay, so
They were to go to remembrance for battles at Gloucester Valley and also at Cap Yong. At Cap Yong was quite a famous battle where the New Zealanders backed up the Australians and the Canadians.
So tell me about Seoul and Korea you saw second time when you went there, invited by the Korean government. What did you, just give us detail. What is the change?
Well, it was miraculous. From what I'd left in 1954 to what it was then, it was been completely rebuilt, was unrecognisable. And the prosperity, obviously the Korean people had worked very, very hard to repair the damage done in their country. And they've set an example, I believe, to the world. I really do. And the hospitality we received was absolutely out of this world. And we're extremely grateful for that hospitality. It was wonderful.
When you left Korea during the war, when did you leave Korea? Now you went there in 1953, and then when you left, when was it?
In 1954, the 16th Field Regiment, which I belonged to, returned to New Zealand, but I was transferred to Japan, to our base camp at Hiro in Japan.
So you left Korea 1954, right?
That's right.
Yeah. When? Month?
About November.
November. When you left Korea, November of 1954, had you ever thought that Korea would become like this today when you saw in 21st century?
You couldn't possibly visualize the technology that had taken place and the Korea that it is today.
You never thought that Korea would become like this, right?
No, but then we didn't realise it was going to be the internet and computers. Computers hadn't been invented, and the internet. So the technology we use by today's standards was quite primitive.
What was your specialty at the time? Specialty, what did you do in Korea?
In Korea, I was a radio operator.
Radio operator.
Artillery, what they described as a driver-op. I drove a small vehicle with a radio in it, and I had a team of SIGs and radio operators under me. I got promoted to Lance Bombardier and then Bombardier.
You belong to 16th Field Regiment and company?
I was in Dog Troop.
Dog Troop.
162 Battery.
162 Battery.
Yes.
So you were in the artillery.
That's right.
But you did radio operator. So it was after the war. What was your mission? What did you do? Daily routine. Could you explain? What did you do there?
In Korea?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. We did a lot of training, and several times, there was a thought that perhaps the Chinese were going to attack again, and we would go from where we were camped to our position. And I spent a considerable amount of time preparing an OP on the line they referred to as the Kansas line, and I was helped to put a tunnel right through a hill, which I have a photo of there.
Ah. Can you show that to us? Show that up to your chin so that we can...
Yes.
You have many pictures.
Yes.
And did you take that pictures?
Yes.
Ah.
So that's guns going off. And so I was up at the front.
Can you turn it around and show that to the camera? Where? That's the Kansas line?
No, they're not there. This is just guns going over there. More there. Excuse me a moment, I'll just turn around again.
Sure.
That's me as a wireless operator.
That's you?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Very serious. Wow.
That's Hill 355. I don't know.
Where?
North of the 38th parallel. That's Hill 355.
That's the 355.
Yes.
That's famous 355.
That's right.
Just give me a second to focus on that. And that's where you work?
We were south of there. But we were north.
Okay.
We were north of the 38th parallel.
Bob, let's talk about that picture because can you scan those pictures? Do you know scanning, how to scan these pictures?
I'm not very good at scanning. I could probably get someone to teach me.
Yes. Do you have any grandchildren?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I think they can scan those.
That's right.
And if you scan those pictures and send it to me, I can put those pictures with your interview together.
Oh, yes.
So that everybody can see it. All right?
Yes.
Okay.
There it is. That's the tunnel. That's the OP, and that's the entrance to the tunnel, and that is the tunnel. We blasted it through rock.
You blasted?
Yes.
And why did you make that tunnel?
The tunnel was to get through to the OP without having to be exposed to the enemy.
I see. How long was it?
I'd say 100 metres.
That's a long.
Hang on. No, I'll correct that. More like 50 metres.
50 meters?
Yes. I think I might
But
be
still, that's very long,
That's
actually, right? Yeah. Amazing. This is important because, you know, not even me, I didn't know that there is a tunnel. And so that if we can scan this all and put it in the website,
Yes.
young children will look at it, look at your picture, and they will compare the Korea in 1954 and now, okay? So let's do that, okay? All right. Thank you. So we were talking about you were located in the north of Incheon, and when you were there in Korea, were you able to really think through how it happened, and were you proud of it, being part of the Korean War?
I am very proud of the fact that I served in the New Zealand Army, and I'm very proud of the fact when I see how Korea has recovered from that war, and I'm very proud of the fact that I was part of it.
And do you have any descendants of your own teaching in the school about the history? Do you have any?
I have a granddaughter who has just graduated as a teacher, but I don't know what subject she's teaching. She's just graduated. I have a daughter in Australia, and I have a daughter in Tauranga.
Granddaughter who just graduated and
Yes.
began to teach.
Yes.
What's her name?
Her name is Paige Sly.
And can you find it out? Where is she?
She's in Palmerston North.
Close from here?
No, long way.
Long way.
Yes.
In New Zealand, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Can you find it out whether she is teaching social studies? If so, you let me know.
She's teaching at an intermediate school,
Uh-huh.
so I don't know. She will be teaching a variety of subjects.
Maybe then she will teach history too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if so, I can invite her to conference. We pay for all the, expenses. And she can learn about Korea more, and she can teach more about the war or Korea that you fought for.
Yes.
Isn't that nice?
That's good. Yes.
Yeah. So please let me know, okay?
Yes.
You have my business card, right?
Yes, I will.
Yes. And ask her to scan your pictures. She will know how to do those things, okay?
That's right.
Yeah. Were there any dangerous moments during your service in Korea?
Only one, not related to the actual conflict, but I had a driver who was inexperienced, and he tipped the truck over a bank. The only other problem was when we were driving through snow, and the snow melted, and the snow froze, and we started to skid. But fortunately, we didn't hit another truck. But then we had to stop and put chains on the truck to grip in the snow.
Yeah.
And although we had big gloves on, I was having trouble putting the chains on. So I took the gloves off and tried to put the chains on with my bare hands, and I found that the chain stuck to my hand. So I very quickly put the gloves back on again.
How was the situation over the DMZ line? Were there any skirmish or were there any danger?
There was always a risk, and of
What kind of risk?
well, the risk that perhaps the Chinese would break the truce, or the North Koreans. And yes, in several times we did what they call bug out from where our camp was back to the defensive line. I would go up to that OP position. So we were very aware of that sort of thing.
But you were not threatened or scared at the time, right? Because war was over.
No.
Yeah. How was the living condition at when you were there in Korea? Where did you sleep? What did you eat? Soft side of your service.
The food, although they had a cookhouse, was very basic. And when we used to go out on manoeuvres or trainings, exercises, we got fed, but it was very, very basic food. You know, nothing fancy whatsoever. Just got bully beef and meat and bread, that sort of thing.
Where did you sleep?
And we slept in tents.
How many in one tent?
There were various sizes. Some would have about 6 or 8, other would have 4. And
How many did you sleep with?
Well, there was one tent. I've got a photo of myself in it midwinter when there was snow piled up outside. There was only 4 of us in that. And then the bigger one, we actually had a little stove in there as well, a diesel burning stove.
You didn't have stove when you were sharing with other 3 in the tent?
No, you never seemed to have much warmth there.
Huh.
No. Sleeping
It
bags.
must be so cold.
Sleeping bags, special winter weather, winter gear. And you'll see one of those photos there where I've got a big parka on.
Mm-hmm. So wasn't that cold?
It was cold.
Cold.
Yes.
But you were able to stand it. If I ask you to pinpoint what was the most difficult thing during your service in Korea, what would you say?
Probably going out on manoeuvres in very cold, wet weather. That's the most difficult part.
What was the most rewarding moment you ever had there?
Well, that too is probably as we were leaving and the Korean people waving us goodbye, almost saying thank you, thank you very much.
Were there any Koreans that worked together with you, or Korean boy or girls that actually served?
No, not with me as an individual. There were the odd Korean boys that did work in the regiment with the officers, and they did various work there too. I personally never had any personal contact.
So when you returned to New Zealand, what did people say about your service there? Did they ask you, where have you been, or something like that? What was the response?
Well, when I went back to where I came off the farm, most people there were very pleased to see me return safely and made me feel very welcome to be home again. And all of them knew where I'd been.
Oh, so that's good.
Yes.
Yeah. Were you able to write letter back to your family?
Yes. Yes.
What did you write about?
Well, just day-to-day things that happened. That's, I got up today and it snowed or things like that, mundane sort of things. Or if I went on leave to Japan, I'd be able to write about that. And the river's frozen over, or things like that.
Do you still keep that letter? Do you still have those?
I do. My family did keep 1 or 2 of them, and I'd have to sort of research it to find out where they are.
Right. So when you see all this transformation from very poor and miserable conditions to one of the largest economy in the world, what would you say to the children in New Zealand when they learn about Korea? What would you say to them?
Well, I would try to explain the difference, but it would be difficult for them to comprehend from what was very primitive to the economy that's there now. It's absolutely. But what I've always emphasised to people I've spoken to is the incredible hospitality we have received from the Korean people when we have returned. And the image of the Korean people, the ex-servicemen, is way up there. Marvelous.
Marvelous. Now this war becomes 70th old. 70-year-old war. Have you heard about those?
Yes.
Never been replaced by the peace treaty at all. We are technically at war.
That's right.
What would you say to the world about this?
It's incomprehensible, really, that there hasn't been a peace deal signed between North and South Korea. And it must be quite devastating to Koreans whose family have been split and haven't been able to reunite. And there might be a glimmer of hope on the horizon at the moment. I hope it comes to something.
What do you think about the current negotiation between Trump and Kim Jong-un?
Trump is the only president that's met with a North Korean leader. There's a lot of criticism about Trump, but he doesn't stand any nonsense. When North Korea got their supposed rockets ready where they could attack, Trump more or less said to them, "You behave yourself or else we'll blow you to pieces." And then he turned around and said to Kim Jong-un, "Let's have a meeting and see if we can't work this out." And he is the only American president who's been able to do that, who's even tried to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's the exact point.
That's right. I think he is the only president that has tried and has been successful. And there's talk about him meeting again too.
But do you think that negotiation will result in success?
I think the North Koreans would like, from what you read now, what I read now, they would like to be joined up to South Korea. But the power brokers the North Korean power brokers don't want to lose their power.
Right. Do you have any special message to Korean people in the context of 70th anniversary?
Yes.
What would you say to the Korean people?
I would hope that in a very short time, the North Korea and South Korea will be combined under one leadership as soon as possible. And those families who have been parted can have the happiness of rejoining together. And I would once again like to thank them for the hospitality I have received and the generosity I've received from the Korean people.
Thank you very much for your fight and your service. Is there any other episode that you want to leave to this interview? You didn't share that with me yet.
No, I think we just about covered all I can cover.
Bob, it's my great honor to meet you, and thank you for your service for the Korean people. And we will never forget what New Zealand did during the war, 1950-53. We are going to make this as a curricular resources, I hope. That's why I'm meeting with a lot of scholars and professors here in New Zealand, and also so that I can connect with the teachers here. And we are using this interview as one of the resources for the lesson plans and modules and primary and secondary resources for the teacher, so that they can talk about the Korea. And that's how I think that we can keep your legacy forever.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.